This red schoolhouse is the oldest schoolhouse preserved one-room school in the New Haven County and the fourth oldest in the state of Connecticut. It was built sometime between 1800 and 1805. Let's go back to the time about 1800. The Revolutionary War was over. If you were a child, you would go to such a school as this one. It would be a one-room with one teacher who would teach all the subjects to all the children from ages 3 to 18 years old. You would be grouped based on your spelling and reading ability and not by your age. Your teacher would work with one or with several students while you would be working at your seat on an assignment. You would learn from each other and watch as others learned. Everybody would know everybody very well. You would do a lot of memorizing and copying. You would not write original stories, but copy from the Bible or textbooks. You would sit on a bench that lined the wall. The teacher's desk and wood-burning stove would be against another wall, which you will see in a short time, or by the blackboard. You would use slate to write on with a piece of chalk because paper at that time was too expensive. As for the history of this building, it was built to serve children in the southern part of the Northford district. Originally, it stood on an area of Route 22 and Grant Drive. Most of the building is original. However, over the years, some repairs were needed. This building is constructed of what is called post and beam construction. It sits on a stone foundation with a very small crawl space underneath. It has a very small attic under the roof. The walls are of plaster, and some of the window panes are original. The floor is not original when you walk on it. A new floor was put in when the school was made into a library. The chimney was made for the stove to keep the room warm on cold days. In 1927, a little group of 17 patriotic women, the Northford and North Branford League of Women Voters, restored the building to make it a shrine, and they moved it 2 miles from its original spot. And then it was moved here to this site on Old Post Road, across the street from the Northford Congregational Church. This building is 16 feet wide and 24 feet long and 12 feet high. As one enters the tiny vestibule, an inner door leads into the one-room building which constitutes where the children learn. There is a continuous line of desks on 2 sides and on one end of the room, and a backless long bench before them. The desks were nothing more than slanted planks, built tight to the wall. When children sat on these benches before the desks, they faced that wall. The wood for the stove was supplied by parents. Who were some of the teachers who taught in this one-room schoolhouse? The oldest records of teachers dates back to 1850, when Miss Phoebe Merwin of Durham was the first teacher known to have taught in the Red Schoolhouse. This leaves a period between when it was built and 50 years later, which it is impossible to fill with the teachers' names. However, a list of 43 men and women spent some of their teaching days in this schoolhouse. Miss Phoebe taught for 2 years and was succeeded by Miss Janet Foote, who was born in Northford in 1834. She was the daughter of Warham William Foote. About 1854, Henrietta Johnson was the teacher. In later years, she taught French at Claverack on the Hudson in New York State. About the start of the Civil War, Deacon Charles Foote was the teacher. Students' records indicate that he was an excellent teacher, but very, very severe. Melville Rose and Benjamin Page taught through the 1860s. Page was followed by his brother, Deacon Charles Page. A Civil War captain even taught in this building. He was Captain James Malsey Lindsay of Northford. He taught here about 1869, after the Civil War. He was graduate of the New Britain Normal School. He served 4 years in the Civil War. Henry G. Newton of Durham, who later became a famous lawyer in New Haven, became a teacher in this one-room schoolhouse. Other teachers whose names are familiar to the surrounding area are Tyler, Foote, Lindsay, Todd, Frisbee, Hart, Hall, and even a descendant of John Davenport, who settled New Haven. She was Elizabeth Bartholomew of Northford. One teacher, Ella Lane of Guilford, spent the night of the Great Blizzard of 1888 with her students in this one-room schoolhouse. She records that one of her students crawled on his hands and knees to the nearest house to obtain a lantern. This was the only light they had that howling, storm-ridden night. Over 500 students who attended this school, only a fraction could be traced. Many enlisted at the outbreak of the Civil War, such as Decatur Boardman and Philip Foote, who died a few months later near Washington, D.C., and now they both lie in the old Northford Cemetery. Soon after Foote left, Jesse Butler was also killed by a Confederate sharpshooter before the defenses of Washington. Next went Isaac Foote and Fred Foote, brothers. They survived the Civil War. A girl named Mary Foote attended the Little Red Schoolhouse and later became the first female lawyer to be admitted to the New Haven County Bar. Students whose names are familiar to North Branford are the Augers, the Dowds, the Footes, the Fergusons, the Blakesley, the Boardmans, the Bunnells, the Phalens, the Tylers, the Dwyers, the Andersons, and many others attended this schoolhouse. In 1925, the Little Red Schoolhouse saw its last student because William Douglas, a little further up this road, was built to replace it. The Little Red Schoolhouse is now owned by the Northford Congregational Church and is leased by the Tutucket Historical Society of Northford, North Branford. Today, the Little Red Schoolhouse stands as a monument to the past and to the many teachers and students of one-room schoolhouses like this one all over the country.